Okay, so let's finish out the gallbladder and bile and the structures that you find in the gallbladder. We had talked about lithotripsy and cholelithiasis. The other term that we need you to be able to identify before leaving the gallbladder, and man, the gallbladder's just killing me today. Gallbladder and bile is cholecystectomy. So very similar to cholelithiasis, but this cystectomy basically means that we're going to remove all of the gallbladder. Your patient will ask if they can live without their gallbladder. Sure. Bile is manufactured in the liver, so it's not necessarily an organ that you can't live without. It makes it a little bit more difficult because now you're going to have to watch your fat intakes. You're going to have to be regulating the amount of water that you intake on a regular basis to keep up with the thickness of the bile that's there. But as far as living without it, it simply just holds and concentrates that bile and emits it as food is leaving the stomach and mixes with that chyme to start breaking down the lipid-based materials that are there, okay? Moving on, we're going to take a look at the pancreas. The pancreas, sitting just inferior and posterior to the stomach, has been discussed in a couple of different chapters now. Most recently, we discussed it in the endocrine system. In the endocrine system, again, giving us those hormones or those chemical messengers, those ligands, with the pancreas, you're looking at a very, very perfect blend of both endocrine and exocrine-based cells. And the percentage is quite substantial. It is 20% endocrine and 80% exocrine. And the exocrine portion are the acinar, A-C-I-N-A-R, acinar cells that are producing and delivering digestive enzymes from the pancreas directly into that duodenum. Okay, so that area of the duodenum is unbelievably important because not only is it receiving chyme from the stomach, it's also receiving bile that's coming from the liver via the gallbladder, right down that cystic duct and dumping directly into the duodenum. And then it's receiving its digestive enzymes from the pancreas. So that area of the duodenum is just a hotbed of chemicals that is breaking down that food product in all of the macromolecule components. So the carbohydrates are almost all but broken down at that point, but huge amounts of protein. And then the duodenum is the area in which you will have that initiation of the breakdown of the lipid-based materials, okay? This is what the pancreas looks like. It kind of looks like, on our model, it kind of looks like the little baby corn that's there. It has 3 parts, a head, a body, and a tail. So here is the head, there is the body, there is the tail, running right down through the middle of it. And you can see it's kind of a whiter color on this particular picture, but over here on the side they've dyed it in blue. So there's a pancreatic duct that runs right down through the middle of the pancreas. Remember that endocrine cells manufacture a hormone that then is directly deposited into the bloodstream, and it rotates through the body through that bloodstream. However, the pancreas is the exocrine cells are a different component. So they are manufactured, produced, and then shuttled directly into this duct. So the exocrine system uses a system of ducts and valving pathways to deliver their material to their targets. So the exocrines, the acinar cells, with all their digestive materials, all their digestive enzymes, are all being shuttled directly into this one pancreatic duct and delivered right there to the duodenum to then begin breaking down large amounts of food product to then be digested up or to be absorbed up through the intestinal villi in the jejunum and the ileum. Okay, so pancreas, spongy retroperitoneal, found just posterior to the stomach. I don't care about the measurements. I don't necessarily care about the head and the body and the tail. What I do care about, endocrine and exocrine glands. Okay, again, the endocrine portion directly controls the secretion of insulin and glucagon. And those two hormones directly control the glucose levels in your blood. Remember that insulin will collect out additional glucose and take it to one of two places, either the liver or the skeletal muscle, converting it into its short-term storage product called glycogen. And then glucagon, as my blood levels begin to fall, 3 hours from now after I haven't eaten, glucagon will actually shuttle over to the liver generally, or it could shuttle to the muscles, but glucagon will cause a process called glycogenolysis, in which that glycogen is converted back into a glucose-based product to be burned as fuels. Okay, the exocrine portion, again, now it says 99% of the pancreas secreting pancreatic juices a day. Yeah, okay, but remember, this is an 80-20 split, 20% endocrine, 80% exocrine in its nature. Those acinar cells, however, are creating a fair amount of pancreatic juices every day. And again, contributing those directly into the small ducts that then deliver into the duodenum. I'm not too concerned about the hepatopancreatic ampulla or the hepatopancreatic sphincter. I do, however, want you to know what the pancreatic juice is. Okay, so what's being created by the pancreas? Ooh, wait a minute. It's an alkaline mixture. What do you mean it's alkaline? Isn't everything in the digestive system acid-based? Absolutely not. So remember that the bolus that originally left the oral cavity, the masticated, chewed up portion that's now been doused in chemicals from the salivary glands, making this wet, mushy ball, passes through that uvula or past that uvula into the oropharynx, and then takes a trip down the esophagus, in which that peristaltic wave will be pushing that bolus down into the stomach. It'll pass by the lower esophageal sphincter and into the stomach, where it will just absolutely be coated with all kinds of hydrochloric acid. Again, this is where the initial protein breakdown occurs, but that bolus will begin to break apart, and the digestion, not absorption, almost no absorption from the stomach, very, very little. The breakdown of that food becomes a mushy, acidic ball called chyme. And chyme, as that peristaltic wave occurs about every 30 minutes, will be pushed out of the stomach through the pyloric sphincter and into the duodenum. Okay, now we are at the level of the duodenum, where we will continue to go through a massive breakdown of that material so that we can get the very, very smallest of the raw nutrients out for absorption in the jejunum and the ileum. In the duodenum, that chyme, that sludgy mess that's left the stomach, then gets completely covered in bile, which will break down the lipid-based portion, and this pancreatic juice made of a very alkaline mixture. Now, we know that we have a very acidic product coming out of the stomach, and we're going to add a very alkaline mixture to it. What do we end up with? We once upon a time talked about the equation in which acid plus base, put a big arrow, produces salt plus water. We end up with a salt-based component that has been somewhat neutralized, and that salt-based component will basically cause that material to just fall apart. Okay? We know that we use salts to tenderize a lot of our meat-based products. So salts, the alkaline and the chemical reaction that occurs between the acid from the hydrochloric acid and the alkaline mixture coming out of the pancreatic juices creates a very, very concentrated salt-based material, and those salt-based materials actually can eat through any of the leftover bonds that are there. Okay, so that alkaline mixture of water, enzymes, zymogens, sodium bicarb. Ooh, if you were in first semester, we talked about sodium bicarb. What is sodium bicarb, or where do I find it in my kitchen? Open it up and find the box of baking soda. That is what sodium bicarbonate is, and it's a fairly alkaline-based material. You'll also find a number of other electrolytes that are there. Okay, the acini cells are secreting those enzymes and those zymogens. And the zymogens are the alkaline-based components that help to break down any of the leftover residual fibrous matter or protein-based matter that's there in that chyme. Again, hydrochloric acid arriving from the stomach gets buffered by that bicarbonate. And we'll talk about the bicarbonate buffer system when we talk about the urinary system. Okay, a couple of other pancreatic enzymes you might find there, amylase. And again, we know that it's an enzyme because it's ASE. Amylase will help us to digest starch-based materials. Pancreatic lipase will help us to digest fats. And what we call ribonuclease and deoxyribonuclease will help us break down that RNA and DNA that might be in our food-based product. Okay? This is that pancreas with its head, its body, its tail. There is that pancreatic duct collecting all of the chemicals that are created by that pancreas, the enzymes, the pancreatic juice that's there. Instead of delivering it directly into the bloodstream like the endocrines, these guys deliver directly into this ducting system, and then it enters into the duodenum. And I'll tell you, it's not on this picture, however, and I'll have to see if I can find, you know what, let's see if there's a picture right here. What's very interesting is the pancreas with its digestive enzymes and the ducting system right there, along with this guy right here called the common bile duct coming from the gallbladder and or the liver sitting just above it. The bile will travel down this gland into the bile duct, enter into the posterior aspect of the pancreas, and the digestive enzymes coming down that duct will meet the bile right here at an entrance to move into that duodenal papillae. Okay? So all of those digestive materials coming together right in the duodenum to continue breaking down the additional chyme that's traveling through that system. Okay. Regulation and secretion. There are 3 stimuli that will cause the release of the pancreatic juices in the bile. Okay, remember, we're talking about materials that are going to be dumped directly into the duodenum to continue breaking down our food-based product. Okay, number 1 is called acetylcholine. Ow, acetylcholine you've seen all over the place, and you better remember it from the muscles and the activation of the neuromuscular junction. Okay, we know that it's a neurotransmitter and that every single muscle contraction in your body must have acetylcholine. Acetylcholine also can be stimulated by the vagus nerve. Oh my goodness, here we are in the autonomic nervous system again. Rest and digest, parasympathetic mode. We're also looking at the enteric nerves right here. And again, that enteric system is a somewhat independent system found only in the digestive system that has no control from the central nervous system. However, the enteric nervous system has quite a bit of influence over the central nervous system. The acetylcholine stimulates the acini cells to secrete those enzymes before your food is ever put in your mouth and swallowed. Okay, so remember we talked about the cephalic phase and we talked about gastric phase. That acetylcholine starts the process in which enzymatic secretions occur from the pancreas before you ever begin to eat. Number 2 is called cholecystokinin. Anytime you see C-H-O-L-E, chole, always assume that we are talking about the gallbladder. Okay, cholecystokinin is a chemical that is stimulated by the gallbladder, and it helps to contract the gallbladder and discharge bile into the duodenum. Okay, so CCK or one more time. CCK or cholecystokinin. Cholecystokinin is actually triggered by fats moving into the small intestine. So as fats in that chyme are pushed out of the stomach immediately, cholecystokinin will cause the gallbladder to contract and push out a lot of bile to begin breaking down that lipid-based material. The third one is called secretin. And again, that acidic chyme that's being dumped out of the stomach will cause a secretion of sodium bicarbonate from the liver and the pancreas to try and level out the pH of that chyme that's being pushed into the small intestine, because we don't want it to be too acidic. It's going to end up damaging the cells of the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Okay, so we want to make sure that it's neutralized. The way that we do that is by that alkaline pancreatic enzymatic material, plus the sodium bicarbonate that gets pushed into there. Intestinal motility. So the intestines, both small and large, go through a process called segmentation. There is a contraction and relaxation along the muscle wall that will push food through from the esophagus into the stomach, through to the duodenum, into the jejunum, the ileum,